ACoS. It is one of the fundamental numbers when it comes to Amazon advertising. Advertising cost of sale, or your ad spend divided by your ad sales, which is two numbers. But I actually submit to you that you should be looking at three numbers to calculate ACoS, because it's going to give you a much better perspective of why your ACoS is what it is, and it can also lend some clarity into why it seems that you can't bring your ACoS down. But yes, we're talking about ACoS, and it seems like it's a fundamental, and it is, but honestly, I really want to dig into it because I had this epiphany. I've been in the Amazon advertising game for a really long time, and ACoS is, of course, one of the first things that we learn about, right? So advertising cost of sale, it is ad spend divided by ad sales. That's the equation for it. It's a good equation. It is a valid equation. I'm not saying you can't get an accurate ACoS calculating it that way, but the thing that we don't get when we calculate ACoS as ad spend divided by ad sales is we don't get perspective on why things are happening. There's a lot of sort of gray areas. So if ACoS goes up, if ACoS goes down, okay, ad sales went up, ad sales went down, ad spend went up, ad spend went down, and we can visualize what the changes are within that equation, but it doesn't give us the why is this happening answer. And that's what I find that when I coach a lot of brands, when I talk to a lot of brands, when we're internally just evaluating what's going on with accounts, constantly troubleshooting, constantly in the data, I find myself trying to answer that why question a lot. What's happening? What is going on? And I'm constantly looking at numbers and in the data and trying to figure out, okay, so how can I look at the least amount of numbers? Because let's be honest, our time is valuable. And so where can we get the least amount of numbers that give us the biggest perspective? And I had, again, I want to say it was 3 to 4 days ago, just an epiphany on a way to evaluate ACoS using only three numbers. So I had this epiphany on a different way to calculate ACoS that gives me massive amounts of perspective onto what is going on in the accounts and allows me to answer the what's going on question. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. I am really stoked about this. We actually had a whole internal training on this, and we're going to be digging into numbers like this more, and I'm going to be sharing that information with you. So definitely would love to have you along for that ride. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you how I've been thinking about ACoS, a little bit more of a breakdown of why in the equation. And then this also the spreadsheet that is in front of me, I have just a forecasting tool, and I'm actually going to be giving out more resources like this. You might find this useful to just evaluate things. And so we're going to go through and we're going to play with some numbers. All right, so let's first go through ACoS. Everyone should know, but it's your ad spend divided by your ad sales. So what does this number tell you? Okay, so it says, all right, out of all of the ad sales that I have in my account, what percentage of that revenue did I have to spend on the ads to generate the revenue? That's the perspective it gives you, which is great. You can also evaluate this versus what is the product's profit margin, so you know how above or below you are on profits and again, this is just looking at the ads in isolation. So what is a valid number? As much as some people want to seem to want to throw out ACoS and only look at tacos, which that's another thing I'm really excited to dig into, again, looking at it through this kind of new equation perspectives. We're definitely going to be digging into total ACoS numbers and things like that. But for right now, I do think ACoS is a very valid thing to look at, right? We want to know how profitable our ads are, regardless if we're fine with running our ads at a little bit of loss to, again, generate positive signals and positive revenue on the account as a whole. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking into this number. And if we see ups or down trends with our ACoS, we definitely want, at the very least, understand what's going on. So the problem that I find with the ad spend versus ad sales equation is missing out on perspective of what's going on. And talking through this and trying to understand it myself, I had come up with another equation that lent some perspective, but not as good of a perspective as my final equation that we're going to get into in a second. But this got me halfway there. So what you can do is you can look at your ad spend and divide it by ad sales, but ad spend can be broken into your cost per clicks multiplied by, and then you can take that and you can divide it by your ad sales. And so I started looking at things like this, cost per clicks multiplied by clicks. That, again, it lent some perspective to what was going on in the account. So I would say, okay, our ad spend went up, our ad sales went down. Okay, was it that our cost per clicks went up, or is it how many clicks we got went up and or down, and fed into the ad spend side of the equation, and then we can just look at sales. So it was very helpful to look at the cost per click number, because that definitely means, okay, we're paying more for the clicks, but maybe we're not generating as many ad sales. Maybe we phrased biz too high. So again, it did lend some perspective, but I didn't find that I got as much information out of this clicks number. So if clicks went up, sometimes we would be like, okay, so we launched a whole bunch of new things. So we're getting more clicks, or maybe there's more visibility on the platform. So we're getting more clicks, we're getting less clicks. But then sometimes clicks would kind of remain steady, but we actually had differences in our ad spend. And so I found myself still kind of puzzling over this. So I would have to go through and troubleshoot things like, oh, okay, so our total sessions down, maybe the ad sales, maybe it's an impressions thing, or maybe our conversion rate went up or down. And then I had this like aha moment, because I was thinking about clicks, and we really know, and something we've been digging into a lot, is that the conversion rate into how the ads perform way more than everybody realizes. How high or low your conversion rate is determines how many clicks it takes you to make a sale. So a lot of times we would do some troubleshooting and we would notice that the conversion rate went down, and so we'd relay that to clients when we're having these discussions, and it's like, cost per click hasn't changed. We haven't really changed anything on the ads. We've been maintaining or maybe launching a couple more things, but generally your average cost per clicks remain the same. However, the conversion rate went down drastically, maybe by a couple points, and so ACoS went up. And although that discussion was valid, sometimes I find it really insightful to be able to pull data and really illustrate how that effect happens. And so when I came up with this equation, I realized, oh, this ties in conversion rate to the ACoS equation and gives so much clarity to what is going on. All right, so I submit to you that a better perspective on ACoS is actually ACoS is equal to cost per click multiplied by 1 divided by your conversion rate. So 1 divided by your conversion rate actually calculates how many clicks on average it takes you to convert to a sale. So if we're looking at the average cost per click, so let's write in, I'm going to do average cost per click, apply 1 times your conversion rate. And then we can lend some more perspective to this and look at the average order value. And why I like looking at the average order value, and this is actually different from the sale price. I was looking at this as like the average sale price here, but what that does not factor into is it doesn't factor in repeat or multiple purchases. So the way it works in calculating the average order value, what you do is you take your revenue and you divide it by the number of orders that you've generated. And oftentimes this number is going to be higher than, say, what the price of the products are. And the reason why is because it's going to calculate in multiple orders. Now, there's a lot of products where maybe even 80% of your orders, 75% of your orders are only like single purchases. But if you get that one in, say, 100, it's going to actually average out to be slightly above. Sometimes it's only a couple cents more. But what this is actually going to do is, again, it's going to lend perspective on repeat purchases and actually give you a better gauge of what's going on. So instead of doing this average cost per click multiplied by 1 divided by the conversion rate divided by the sale, if you do average order value, it's actually going to come out accurate and and it is going to be equivalent to whatever ACoS that you have in the account. So that's why it's good to calculate like this. So hopefully you see the benefit of looking at ACoS like this. Again, this calculates in the conversion rate and how that really affects the numbers. But I know you can look at formulas like this and say, oh yeah, I can see that being valid. But what I really want to do is go through and give you some illustrations on why this is such a powerful way to look at it and how you can really evaluate that. And then in the very next video I'm going to put out, I'm actually going to take these calculations even one step further and look at, okay, given I want to hit this target ACoS, what kind of conversion rate, what kind of cost per clicks do I want? And that's going to, again, lend even more perspective to this kind of ACoS discussion that we're having. All right. So I find it easy to play with numbers. So let's dive into this kind of spreadsheet. Fun fact, I'm going to put a link to this actual sheet below. Feel free to make a copy of it, use it however you want, share it with a friend. But you can also potentially use this as a forecasting tool for potential in a new launch, given you can look at your average cost per click if you want to look at your average order value. And if you can guesstimate what you think your conversion rate would be, you can actually spit out an ACoS projection for a product launch. So you might find that useful. At first, let's go through these numbers and what ACoS looks like in this scenario. So one thing that I want to illustrate to you is a lot of times people will go through with a product and maybe the initial launch price is super low. Like maybe we're dealing with a $15 product and the cost per clicks are high, say $2. And I see this scenario a lot. And people say, oh, my average order values are really low and the cost per clicks are really high. It's really difficult to bring my ACoS down. And even myself, I struggled with wrapping my head around what is potentially possible given the cost per clicks in the space, my conversion rate, and my average order value. And again, I feel like a lot of accounts these days are really struggling to identify, can I bring my ACoS down? What is a good ACoS? I have heard that question more than once. And yes, good ACoS is highly relevant to an account. It depends on your account, depends on your goals, but there's also this what is possible in my scenario, in my account question, that I feel like this equation and also this forecasting spreadsheet will again lend you a perspective on what you might be able to expect. So again, this is a scenario that, and someone might look at this and say, okay, 121% ACoS. That's not sustainable for me. I'm sorry. I really can't go through with that. And you might even have a worst case scenario, like maybe you don't have reviews. So I would say about 10% is about average. And notice how that clicking it down, one less conversion rate means one more $2 click that we had to get to generate a $15 order. And that is giving us a projected ACoS of 133.33%, which you saw that jump. It's like a 10 point jump in ACoS, which with only 1 point down in the conversion rate. So you can see how this conversion rate number plays into it. So you might say, okay, so if I need to bring my ACoS down, either I need to bring my ad sales up or I need to bring my average cost per click down. And maybe you don't have as much wiggle room with your price point. Maybe the highest you can get it, say, maybe I can get it to $7. Like maybe that would be good. And still 117% ACoS, that's better than the 133 or 121 that we were dealing with, but that's still not giving us anywhere near break even at all. We're actually paying over our entire sale price to generate an order through ads. And so that might just be a scenario that you have to be okay with, but maybe you're going after the high volume keywords in your space. So maybe there's a way that you can bring down your average cost per clicks through better bidding, through better keyword targeting, through lower bid, maybe some auto campaigns thrown in there. So maybe you're able to bring down your cost per click a whole 50 cents, which gives you a cost per click of $1.50. And then now we can see the projected ACoS is 88.24%. And while that's much lower than the 117%, maybe this is as much wiggle room as you have in your account. Maybe you can't get any visibility below $1.50 bid, and the market really is not going to allow you to raise your prices any more than $17. And maybe you've optimized your listing as much as humanly possible, and still your average conversion rate, let's say you get like a 5-point bump, all right? So let's give it to a 10.5. And it gives us a little better, actually. But maybe your ACoS targets, given the fact that maybe you just want to break even on your ads and your profit margins are 40%, and you're constantly trying to get down to 40%, and you're stuck with the scenario that the account continuously runs at 84%, and you can't seem to lower it. And this, why you can't seem to lower it, is because it's simply mathematical. That's what your average order value is, and that's what your average conversion rate is, and that's the average cost per click that you really need. And you could play with this and say, maybe I can get it down to $1. That kind of gets me close. Maybe I need to get it down to 75 cents. That gets me a little closer. Maybe if I had it at 72 cents, I can get it a little bit better. Okay, so we're pretty much close here. Can I get it to 72 cents? But we just went all the way from $1.50, and I'm talking about average cost per clicks here, to 72 cents. That's a really big drop. And what you're going to do is you're going to sacrifice a lot of visibility to bring your cost by bringing your cost per clicks that low, because the way Amazon advertising works is it's an auction. It's not that, I've said this before, it's not that Amazon's trying to take your money. I'm sure they are more than happy with the ad revenue that they're generating from their ad platform. Do not get me wrong. Amazon is very happy with the high cost per clicks, but that doesn't mean that there's high cost per clicks on the platform because Amazon's saying, hey, drive up those bits. It's because your competition has come into the space and maybe they have better profit margins. Maybe they're just savages, but they are willing to pay that $2 at $1.50 cost per click. And so they're going to win high on those search pages. And because you're coming in at a much lower bid and it's an auction, you're just not going to win those premium placements. It's just not going to work. So in that case, if $1 is what you need to generate this, maybe you're able to get it down to $1. That's still a big jump from $2. It's still a whole dollar average down on your cost per click, but maybe you can at least run it here and work on, say, your conversion rate. Maybe you just need to be okay with running at, say, a 53.48% ACoS, because that is what is possible in your market. So hopefully you can see why this looking at ACoS in this way can be really valuable and lends a lot more perspective to the discussion than just looking at it as ad spend divided by ad sales. I know for us, my team, we're super excited to dive into these numbers a little bit deeper. Again, I'm going to be putting out another video, next one, as soon as we put it out. I'm sure we'll link it somewhere, but we're actually going to be looking at, okay, so if I punch in that original equation, say I'm $2 to start, say I'm at $10 here, and say I have to start at 15, yeah, 133 is not great. What would I need to get my average cost per click to? What would I need to get my average conversion rate to if I want to hit a 40% projected ACoS? And then you can evaluate those numbers and say, okay, so how reasonable and or unreasonable is this? And then maybe you can try and work your way halfway there. So again, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, of course, leave them down below, and there will be a link to this spreadsheet in the description where you can go through, maybe punch in some numbers and evaluate your own account.